You can disrupt your trauma for good. And I mean that in two ways. If we don't do something to disrupt that trauma, we stay stuck in it. We end up in a lot of shame, guilt, and victimhood. And I know firsthand all about this. I've had a lot of trauma, even back from my childhood. A lot of you know my story with Jamie, my daughter, who, literally the most brilliant person I knew, the most gifted, amazing, hilarious, artistic, quick-witted, athletic, loved God, the most amazing person, wound up addicted to drugs, and in a world where she was hanging out with gang members. She was shot when she was 18 and murdered when she was 30. All of that was traumatic, all of those years. We are almost 9 years in the legal process, and we don't have a trial scheduled yet. That's traumatic as well. But you know what? Even back to my childhood, my mom was single and young, very young. By the time she was 20, she had 3 of us, and money was tight. There was no way to go after anybody for child support back then. And so we didn't get child support a lot, and we struggled a lot. And my mom was very unhappy and disappointed with her life. And there were things that we saw and experienced that we shouldn't have. And there were a lot of traumatic events. One of them that I haven't spoken about very much publicly is that my mom took a bottle of pills when I was 7 years old. And I was the only one that figured it out. I was the only one that knew. And I never even said anything to her for 20 years. So all of this stuff builds up, and we wind up feeling badly about our lives. I remember being ashamed and embarrassed about my mom. It's probably why I didn't say anything for all of those years. And certainly at the beginning of Jamie's addiction, there was so much shame, tons of guilt. And then there's the victimhood. And I think honestly, for at least my experience with trauma, the victimhood is probably the most strangling. And it's because we feel as if we have no power. These things have happened to us. And certainly, there was nothing I could do about what happened when I was a child. Turned out there was nothing I could do about Jamie's addiction, about her choices, about her being shot, her being murdered, all of that. There's nothing I can do about this legal system. All of it is happening. But I can decide if I'm going to keep focusing on that. Am I going to keep repeating that cycle of trauma and living in the shame and the guilt and focused on it, and then reliving it over and over again? It literally destroys you from the inside. So what I finally realized is I needed to disrupt my trauma, and I needed to do it for good. So meaning once and for all, but also for good, meaning use it for good. So whatever this thing is that has happened to you, it is real and it is painful, and no one can take any of that away from you. But stop allowing it to steal your power. There's no power in victim land. The power is when you rise up, you stand up, you get up off of that mat, you pull the emergency brake on the roller coaster from hell, and you say, I'm going to take what has happened and I'm going to use it for good. Imagine how different your life can be when you do exactly that. Today's the day to disrupt your trauma for good, because your story matters, and it is time, my friend, to start living it courageously.